Hey there and welcome to this video. Due to some difficulties for me to produce a video where I'll be talking by myself about the livery designer, I will instead upload a clip from the last Q&A stream from Dovetail Games with timestamps so you can find the questions more easily. I hope you guys still enjoy the video though. Have fun!
Okay, right. Let us now turn our attention to the livery designer, which is today's premium subject for conversation. Now, the first thing that has been asked is how many shapes... Actually, I've seen a couple in the chat actually going, is it going to be on console? Yes, everything we're talking about is available on every platform. There's no difference in functionality between the three, except a few minor control quirks, and we'll be dealing with minor control quirks shortly. Let's have a look at the livery designer. So I'm going to switch over because someone has said how many shapes, what sort of shapes, and what do they look like, and all that kind of business. I go like, well, let's show them, shall we? So have a look at this. There you go. Right. So this is an ICA3M, and it's being customized by a member of the marketing team. Who was turned loose on it for a couple of days to see what they could come up with. Now, they came up with a few different liveries, but what we've got here is a speed build of just one of them. Obviously, we've sped up the footage quite a bit. This was not done all in one sitting. So while you're watching this, because obviously this goes on for a little while, we'll get to some questions on the topic of the livery designer. So is it going to feature logos from the licenses that we have already? So is there a Deutsche Bahn? Is there a CSX logo that you can just stick on top of your tube train?
No. Licenses for operators are the strict rules about how they can be applied that we have to stick to, and then there's approvals processes for how they're applied. So no, official opera license logos are not in there.
Okay, how about the ability to upload our own images? So if I've got a nice transparent ping of Princess Leia that I want to slap on the side of my train, as you would, easy peasy.
It's not possible to import images of your own either. There's some complexities of that that we want to be able to deal with because they can't be PNGs anyway. They need to be vector graphics so that they can be scaled and so forth, as you're seeing is happening here. But then we'd also say, how do we get them onto things like consoles? So we need to think about what infrastructure might be involved in that. This was something we've definitely talked about. It's not possible in the game right now.
And there's also the very, very, very large issue of copyright,
yes.
Which we have to be especially careful of because of the licensing that we do already. There's a lot that we've got to abide by in order to use real train licenses. So I mean, obviously, nicking copyright from various different train manufacturers and operators is one thing. Wanging Princess Leia on the side of your train, that's another copyright infringement again. So we do have some concerns with that regard. Will we be able to design the chassis, the wheels, the roof, or is it literally limited to the skin?
It's the paintable. It's the area of the train that would normally be painted. So as you can see from what the artist is doing with this ICE3, it's the paintable areas. You can't touch the windows. And it automatically excludes them. So if you take a shape and you splat it over the top of the window and the body, the window is automatically cut out. And the same for things like the grills and the wheels there. You can slide the decals around however you want, and then they will just not render anywhere they're not supposed to render.
I get it. Okay. So I can overlap shapes over the wheels, for example, but it's not going to show up.
Yeah, it's not going to. Yeah, exactly. It's not going to show up on the wheel. So you could, if you want to do a triangle which looks like it would be over the wheels, and it shows up on the bodywork either side of the wheels, you could do that without having to try to guess where all the bits would be.
Right, okay, I get it. So will the livery applied to one loco apply to all locos of that class, or can we have different locos and different liveries on track at the same time? What's the variation that we're going to see in terms of liveries in game?
So you've got a lot of flexibility in the scenario planner. You can kind of, when you should create a service and you specify you want to use, say, the ICE3M on that service, if you've got any reskins that you've created in the livery designer, then you can it'll give you a list of all the valid liveries, and you can put them, you can pick this one will be this livery, so you can kind of use the liveries as you want in the scenario planner. In the service mode, because there's more memory constraints to be dealt with there in terms of lots more trains running around and so forth, the way that it works is that you pick which train you want to use via the normal if you've already played Train Sim World, you'll know that you pick liveries by using the livery selector in the service mode screen. The same process applies here. When you go into livery selector, all of your custom liveries will apply in there, will be listed in there as well. And what happens then is that trains that you see on the route will either then be a mix, well, they will be a mix of your livery that you have chosen or the standard one. So in this case, in the case of the IC3M, it'll be the DB white and red livery or the one that you've picked, such as this one. So there'll be two variants.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, is there a limit to the number of layers in terms of text and shapes that can be added to one loco?
So you can add 300 layers, and one layer contains one shape.
300 and do what now? Can you do that again in English?
So the limit is 300 layers, and a layer is a unit that contains one shape. So if you add a decal of a square, that will be on its own layer. If you then add another square, that's on its own layer. So you add that square, you'll then shape it and move it. You can then go back to the layer and move it around, copy paste it somewhere else. You can duplicate it. You can do lots with that layer. You can reorder the layers in terms of putting things on top of each other in different orders. Sort of functionality you'd be familiar with in many paint programs. But the limit then is 300 layers
per train.
Per train.
Per train. Okay. Will I be able to go back and change or modify existing designs that I've done later on, or are they baked and I'm never allowed to touch them again?
Nope. Once you've saved them, you can then come back and you can edit them and make refinements to them. So you've got you can come back. So if you spend a few hours, in fact, in the case of these liveries, they were built over 2 or 3 sessions. So and if you want to come back and refine it, you absolutely can. Is there a limit to the number of designs that I can store for individual locos? So there's a limit of 300 reskins in total. How you make that up? If you make 300 ICE3 reskins or one reskin of 300 different types of loco, it's up to you. But there's a limit of 300 liveries in total.
How many different colours are there? Now you didn't know this one. We didn't ask this in advance, but everyone wants to see the paint palette. We've got all this pre-recorded. As you can see, colour is definitely possible. How many different colours off the top of your head?
It's a standard color gradient, so it's a hue saturation value pickup slider thing. So you have a vertical, horizontal slider where you can pick up all the different. If you use paint programs and you know what HSV color picker looks like, it is. So it's the standard, probably 16.8 million color picker thing in there. So there's a huge range of colors that you can use to pick from what you want.
Can we use gradients on those shapes, or are they just solids?
Some of so down to whether the decal has a gradient in it or not. So some of the decals do, some of them don't, or most of them don't, in fact, but some of them do.
Is it possible to do weathering using the livery editor?
There's a lot that's possible with the livery editor, and using some of those extra shapes and some of the sort of the slightly weird shaped ones. I think it'd be quite if you could be quite inventive. I don't see why you can't do weathering. It's not something that we've experimented with, but because you can choose the colors and you can put different decals down, some of them have got the gradients on them. I think that it should be something that people can explore, and I'm keen to see what people do. You're
paraphrasing that, or rather, you're elongated phrasing. So when we turned the team loose to try, there's only one person turned loose to make these initial liveries here. What we've got here, I mean, as you can see, we've got the effect of it looking like it's a cutaway with a whole bunch of gearworks inside. Now, we didn't tell them to do this. They just decided to have a go and see what they could come up with. So they've created shadowing and all sorts of stuff there. Doesn't quite work in game, but you know what? For a first swing, it's pretty good. And to be honest, that's what we're going to see from the community as well. So anybody who gets into livery designing is undoubtedly going to surprise us. So
this one surprised us.
Yeah, there aren't any dedicated weathering options in there. Then it'll be really quite interesting. I mean, you know, to see exactly what people can come up with. Is the livery designer going to work on the preserved collection stock?
No.
Okay.
No, there's a lot of work required to remap the texturing to make it work with it. So when we make a model, we'll make a model and we'll optimize the way that we do the what they call the UV map, the way that the textures are mapped onto the 3D model. We'll optimize that so that it's as performance optimal as possible. But that doesn't work at all. You need to be able to put textures anywhere with the remap tool, with the livery tool. So we need to then remap the locos, so retexture them entirely, effectively. So there's quite a lot of work to do that.
So it's a no, but there's a reason for it, rather than you're just being a lazy bones and can't be bothered.
No, totally. It's quite an extensive amount of work. It's very different, for example, to Scenario Planner, which was turned out to be actually relatively light amount of work. This is quite an extensive amount of work.
Okay. Are there templates for letters and numbers in different fonts, or do we have to create them ourselves?
So there's one font, and you can see the font being used here. It's a sans serif font, and there's letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, that you can use in there. You can see some of them in the layers there that have been applied.
Can we save groups of shapes or decals to be used later? So I can create some presets?
You can't. What you can do is you can take layers, you can group them together so that you can move them around, treat them as one thing, and then you can replicate them within one train. So the some of the logos that have been created in here, like the Colne text there, they've collapsed that into one group. You could then easily stamp that down the rest of the train. What you couldn't do then is to go to a Talent 2 and take that on there, because you can't save those groups out.
You do have a few icons in here as well as the text, don't you?
Yeah, there you can see there's actually that's I think a UK tops code, actually the thing you see underneath a UK train they've put on the door there. So there's a number of standard decals. There's fire escape signs, there's bicycle signs, there's first class and second class signs, things that will help you detail up a train. So because the train is completely blank, so you can then go into this set of logos as they're called in the UI, and then you can add all sorts of different detailing then onto the side of the train, and then you can fill that in as you want to.
And is it possible to use different types of material? So shiny stuff, matte, I don't know, whatever else people would use. For me, it's matte all the time, but there you go. Anyway, I already know the answer to this, so I'm bigging up the question rather more than I should do, because it's a...
It's a no.
All right. Okay, well, you can't have it all. What settings are there available for each shape or decal? So can we change size, transparency, angle, all of that kind of business? What can we do with it? I mean, we've seen some examples going on here.
Yeah, so you've got you can do scaling, and you can do scaling in a sort of a linked way so that it scales uniformly width and height, or you can unlink it and do width and height separately, so you can stretch and squash shapes and reuse and abuse them however you want to. There's angle, so you can rotate them around. There's shear, so you can bend them or slant them, and I think it's I can't remember what else there is. Transparency is not there in there at the moment, no.
Are you able to change the interior colours?
No, you've only got control over the exterior.
Okay, and this is all coming from the chat, you see, so you're unprepared for any of this. I did see one more that I wanted to ask. Is it possible to edit the original livery as well? No. We provide you with, the game provides you with a white base coat train, or light grey actually, and then you can use the paint option you can see on there to put a different base coat on the train, and then you apply layers on top of that. You can't edit a DBICE 3 white and red train, but you could make your own. Right. Now, the last question we've got in this kind of section. Well, actually, we've got two left here. I mean, the first one is sharing, and I'm going to allow you to avoid having to answer this one. So we said early on that you would not be able to share your liveries. That is still true. It is possible to get somebody else's livery on PC, but in order to do so, you would have to take all of their liveries, and they would overwrite your own in the process. So you could take the entire livery collection and replace your own with it, but isolated liveries you can't. I suspect that some enterprising YouTube personage who does a quick tutorial on how to do stuff might find themselves quite popular, but that's just me.
Yes.
So we know that sharing is a very popular thing that people want, and it is under investigation, but it isn't coming. We've got no plans to introduce it at the moment because there are a lot of things we have to consider. So the actual last question is, how do you like the idea of implementing some community shapes or decals later on? This worked quite well for the Forza team, and those who are familiar with Forza's skin editor are probably going, this looks somewhat familiar. So you know, you always stand on the top of giants or on the shoulders of giants.
Totally.
If you stood on the top of them, they might waft you off. So how do you feel about taking shape suggestions from the community to integrate further on?
I mean, as we've always said, this is version 1 of the livery designer, and I'm really keen. The decals and shapes are something we absolutely can expand as time goes on, and we're really keen to see what people do, how they use it, what other decals and shapes would help them achieve the sort of their design goals they want to achieve, or might make the things they want to achieve simpler, so that maybe more people can do it. So definitely, I really want to hear what people think about that.
Yeah, I mean, before we go neck deep into ideas that we've got, we want to hear your ideas once you've actually got to use it. You will quickly find any problems that exist with the livery designer. You will quickly come up with functions that you would quite like to see, and we want to hear about that. But until you've actually had a go with it, it would be unwise to start gathering ideas. It's all about figuring out based on some experience. The one thing I will say is that original design you saw there on the BR406, that took around 8 hours to make in total, but that was the very first thing they made. So they were kind of learning as they went, having sketched something out, and the game did crash while they were doing so. So whatever you end up doing with the livery designer, my recommendation is save frequently. Obviously, if you're going to take 8 hours to create something, it's going to use a heck of a lot of different layers. And while we have tested it, the number of times we've tested it is not as many as we would like. So please do save your designs regularly, if not frequently. I'm just putting it out there. I would rather pre-arm people than have disaster. So moving on to the next section, we're going to talk about graphics next.
That's it with this video again. Sorry for the low effort for this video, but I'm going to be away for a week starting tomorrow, so I had to hurry up with this one. I hope you guys understand that. Anyway, have a great day. Bye.